Hello and welcome to another one of these. Yeah, another Let's Program. And it's going to be a new program today. And what I'm going to be doing is working on a timeline program. This is something that I've been needing, wanting desperately. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but this is one where it's not just for experimental purposes of putting things together. Oh, and also, to interrupt myself, I found where I'd had a setting that was making this basically record things at a lower resolution than they should be. So hopefully these are a little bit easier to read and a bit clearer. But anyway, so this is a program that I'm calling Timeline because I don't have a better name for it. But the idea of this program is that I will be able to use it to make timelines. So there's a couple of things that are going to notably jump up in complexity with this one, just by necessity, because I want to have it be a more fully featured program than the color mixer, which is the previous thing that I'd made. So the first thing that I want to do actually is add a menu strip to this guy. So this gives me your traditional menu. If you put an ampersand in front of a wiggle my finger in front of the screen, in front of a character here. Excuse me, I've got hiccups suddenly developing. Okay, if you put an ampersand in front of a character like that, it will make it be underlined, as you see there. So we need we need an open. I'd like to put a little line there. Save as. Actually, I should probably. So this is a convention thing that I'm doing right now. When I put little dots like that, I do that to indicate doing this will bring up a dialogue. Actually, new might not need a dialogue. But it's just a personal convention that I follow. I don't know how true it is to like Windows conventions or anything like that. So it's just something that I do. Let's see. So I want to give this some shortcut keys. So this is a spot where it's really a good idea, and you can just type on your keyboard to jump to the correct key. A really good idea to follow traditional conventions with this sort of thing. So like new is Control N, open is Control O, save is Control S, for example. Because if you don't follow conventions, it will probably confuse people. Now, save as is something that probably doesn't come up enough to require a shortcut key. If you're going to put one there, I'd usually put like Control Shift S or something like that. But I'm not going to bother in this case. And let's just put an exit. Okay, so I can double click on these to give them their functionality and let them know what it's going to do. So this is just going to close, but it's probably going to need to do a little bit more than that. But I'll get into that later. New, open, save as. Okay, so that's kind of our baseline for that. And that is not a thing that I need. And then I want some dialogues. So here what's important is I need an open file dialog. So you drag it on there and it puts the thing down here. And I need a save file dialog as well. So this is going to be save timeline file, and here's going to be open timeline file. So let me spell that with a lowercase I because that's going to bother me otherwise. So what we're going to do then is save as will most likely save timeline file .show dialog, and this will be open timeline file .show dialog. So this is going to be establishing that when you click those buttons, those dialogues will pop up, so that way you can do stuff. I'm probably not going to test those a whole lot in recording, but I will definitely be testing them at a future point. So the next thing that I need to do is kind of establish what extension I want. So I'm going to call these TLFs for timeline file. And let's just give it a default name of untitled.tlf. and then filter. So you see down here, it gives you the format. So timeline file pipe star.tlf. And then right here, I'm just going to delete the default name and give it the filter. So these filters are really important because they will they will determine what files can show up and that sort of thing. So they are actually very important. Open timeline file and save timeline file. So this is kind of some preamble stuff that I know I can put together because I know I'm going to need it. And I can do those too. So I'm going to eventually need to do some additional things. Like, for example, in order to save, I'm going to need a timeline file name, right? So I'm going to need the file name of the current timeline file, but I'm not quite sure how I want to structure all of that stuff yet. So I'm not going to do that part just yet. What I do know I need, however, is data, right? This is going to be making lots of data. So what I'm going to want to do is add a class for that. So I've thought a little bit about what functionality that I want this to have. So I'm going to make a class right here called a timeline. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another class. Add class. And this one is going to be called an event. So events, ooh, that's actually a bad name. Well, that's okay. So it's going to be event based. Because this is going to be an abstract class. Because what a timeline effectively is it's a list of events. So the question here that I need then is, how do I want to handle storing these events and sorting them? The thing that makes this significant is, do I want to go full bore with like months and dates and stuff? And if so, do I then need to like be able to set up custom dates and custom like standardized hour lengths and all that sort of business? That sounds pretty complicated, but it is some functionality that I might want in the future. So I don't think I'm going to start off that way, but I want to set up the design in such a way that I can go there. So I'm going to go ahead and add another class. It's going to be a very, very simple one if I can find my add. I'm going to call this timeline date. So right now, I'm just going to give this a simple public int raw value get set. So right now, this thing, let's see, timeline date. This is a constructor that allows me to be able to set what a raw value is. Gets the raw value of this state for sorting purposes. Because one of the things we're going to need to do is be able to sort stuff. Now, I'm making this class as basically an int wrapper, so it's just this raw value int. But I'm doing that so that way I can come into the timeline, and I can make this timeline a list of tuples. Now, a tuple basically represents some number of types mixed together. So I'm going to have a timeline date and an event base. So this list, which is going to be called events, is going to house two pieces of information per thing. And I'm just going to put an underscore in front to indicate it's private. And let's make a public this hideous monster accessor for it. But we don't need people setting our events thing. Events and get return events. So this is gets a list of events in the timeline. the list of events in the timeline. Okay. The triple slashes automatically brings up the summary thing, and then when you hover over that later, it will show it so you can do stuff with it. So now what I want actually is I want a public void add events, and then I need a timeline date when and an event base what. Okay, so I'm putting this in its own function for a good reason. Adds an event to the timeline, keeps it sorted. Okay, so let's see. It actually probably would be more efficient for this to be a linked list, but I'm not going to worry about that a whole lot. When did this event happen? What happened? So I'm just going to do it this way. Events add new tuple blah blah blah. When what, and then I'm going to go ahead and make a private void sort timeline, just because I think this will be very convenient to have. Sorts the timeline from earliest to latest. And then I can call sort timeline here. So I don't know if I'm going to need to call sort timeline anywhere else, but there's a decent chance that I will, so I'm just breaking out into a separate function. And it's actually going to be really simple because I just do this as x, y, x dot item 1 dot raw value is less than y dot item 1 dot raw value. Let's see, is that the right way to set one of these things up? It's been a while. Oh, right. It needs to be... okay, so I think I need to make this y minus x. To do verify this is the right way. So this is a comparison, and it's an integer-based comparison. Basically, what it effectively works out to is sort needs 3 pieces of information. Does the first item belong before the current item, after the current item, or are they at the same spot? And apparently my scan to computer is no longer active. Thanks, Windows. I did not care about that. Go away. So it does this by using an integer. Negative values represent, I think the first item goes before. Negative or positive values indicate the first item goes after, and 0 indicates that they're at the same spot. So if I'm wrong on that, I'll just find out and fix it. But I need to add some events. So there's a reason why I've done it this way. And the reason for that actually will be fairly simple, because one of the things that I want to do is kind of have linked timelines. So be able to basically be in one of these files, I will be able to have multiple timelines. I'm probably going to do that by having timelines within timelines, if that makes sense. I'll need to figure out how I want to set up the interface for it, but that usually what I want to do is I want to set up the data beforehand and then figure out how the interface is going to reflect that data. That's typically what I prefer to do. So let's make class split timeline, and let's call this it inherits from event base, and this thing notably has a private timeline. Timeline equals new timeline, and then public timeline get timeline. So I'm just doing the same thing here. I need to add a return, but I'm doing the same thing here that I did elsewhere. Gets the timelines stored in this split timeline. So I'm doing the same thing here that I did in the previous spot, where I'm using a property to expose this for reading, but you can't write to it. So you can't change the timeline that's stored in here. So just a simple thing to do. It's not strictly speaking necessary because I'm the only one working in this program, and I know that I'm not going to I'm going to try to avoid screwing things over for myself. But if you're working with multiple people, it definitely can be helpful to think about what you're exposing. And even if you're just doing it to be safe for yourself, that can save you a lot of headache in the future. So what I'm thinking I'm going to want to do is have a tabbed control here. So maybe not everything will need a tab, but I'm going to need... Okay, so I'm wanting to add a tabbed control, if I can remember where those are. Right, they're going to be in containers. That's where they're at. Tab control. So this has tabs, as you can see. I don't need this second one, so I'm going to delete... Whoop. Give me my tab control back. I'm going to remove tab. There it is. Okay, so timelines. And so this can basically fill up the entire space. So what I want to do is, it doesn't by default kind of want to do that. I'm going to put this at 0, 25, I think it is. You can come over here and check the height of this. So that's 24, so 0.25 is a good spot for it. And then making this size kind of fit exactly is... Because it wants to automatically leave some amount of padding is the thing. I don't actually want that. So I'm going to go ahead and back into this code, and I'm going to add a resize end event. Yeah, that's a fine name. And what this event does is it triggers when we finish resizing the control. So I'm going to go here and go timelines dot client or dot size equals new size client size dot width. Now client size is really useful. I think I might have talked about it in the previous one, but it basically gets the size of the client area. So if there's if you're getting the full size of the control or form or whatever, it will include all of the size of the borders and all sorts of things that you're not probably drawing this on. So client size is basically kind of the area that you can do stuff in. So timelines minus top. So this is something else that I like to do is when I'm doing positional stuff, I like to reference where I'm at, for example, to get the spacing, so that way I'm not doing magic numbers. Magic numbers is just where if I put 25 in there, that'd be a magic number because where does 25 come from? But if I say, oh, I want to remove the top from the height because it's the height of the client is going to include from top to bottom, and I just want from the top of this to as far as down as it can go, then it's a bit clearer and it's not where did this 25 come from? And also if I move things around later, it doesn't become a problem. Technically, if I didn't want this always to be at 0 on the x, I would want to subtract timelines.left. But that's an extraneous operation that I don't feel particularly need to do. So what I'm going to want to do then is I'm going to want to, let's see, select timelines. Where do I... Okay, tab page 1. So I'm going to call this main timeline. So everything will have a main timeline. Let's just call this tab main timeline. Okay. So what I'm going to need now is I'm going to need a... Oop, that's not how I add new controls. let's see. I'm going to want to add a user control. I'm going to call this timeline control. So the purpose of this control is going to be to display us a timeline. So what I'm going to want to do is figure out how I'm going to actually display a timeline, but there's a few things that I know I'm going to need right away. So the first one is I'm going to need a timeline. I'm going to go ahead and make this one public. Actually, no. Okay, I'm going to do this two ways. Private timeline, excuse me, owning timeline equals null. I'm going to do this a little bit complicated for a good reason. Public timeline. Oh, why are you? Oh yeah, whatever. That's fine. Actually, I don't need that. Oh, this is going to be another case of where. So by default, stuff kind of gets made internal or whatever. So internal is kind of like a weird public. Or no, this is yelling at me because I don't have the semicolon there. But I don't need a semicolon there. Let's see. I'm just going to call this owning. No, you know what? Let's just call this timeline. Get turn owning timeline. Now this is an important thing. Is this is going to have a set. Okay. Let's see. Timeline properties. Okay, so this does need to be internal. There we go. Get some auto formatting in. So what this needs to do is set owning timeline equals to value, and then do some stuff to make the new timeline show up. So go over here, and I'm going to go. Where is my handy dandy? Oh, all right. I'm going to need to build this first, and then I can build started. So I'm looking in the lower left corner where it says build started, build succeeded. Let's just refresh my toolbox, and now I have a timeline control, which is good because that's what I want. So I'm going to call this main timeline control, and let's go ahead and put this guy at 0,0. Okay, so something that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to call this function right away. I can just pass it null because I don't reference those. And the reason why I want to do that is because this like sizing stuff is going to be pretty imminently happening. So I'm going to want to do for each. Okay, so how do I want to handle this? I can do it by, okay, here's what I'm going to do. For each tab control, oh, it's probably like a tab page. Tab in timelines dot tab pages. Yes. Okay, cool. I want to do tab dot controls. So actually, this is just for safety. If tab dot controls dot is it length or count? It's count. So arrays, I think, use length, and other stuff uses count. So that's why I wasn't sure exactly which one it was, because sometimes you get a little weird and wonky which one uses length and which one uses count. I guess count is probably more common, but it's something where it doesn't take long to check anyway, and I don't necessarily always remember. So if there are controls, then I want to go into the first one and set its size equal to tab.client size. And let's fix that formatting, and I need my closing brace for the function. Okay. So when I call this right off the bat, it will resize this control, the timelines control right here, to be correct in the window, and it will resize this one also to fill up this tab. Okay. So now what I need to do, I need another event. Because obviously we don't want all of our events to be split timelines. That seems a little bit silly. But there's a piece of information that I know that I'm going to need to be able to reference. So this is actually a really good question. Do I want to, in my timelines, do it this way? Or do I want to just do it event-based? And I think I actually want to get rid of the tuple here. So this is going to take a moment to reconfigure stuff. But it'll make sense momentarily because I think events are going to want to be able to reference when they are to make drawing stuff a bit easier. Let's get rid of this right here. And then this right here is going to just need to be a new. Okay, and then I can probably just get rid of the when because that will be part of an event. So I'm just going to add what. And that means I should get rid of this. Okay. Okay, now I need to fix this, but I can't do that just yet. Because I need to go over here to event base, and I need to make a, we'll do a private timeline date, when, all right, let's just call this date equals new, blah, blah, blah. At this point, you've seen this a bajillion times. Turn date. Oh, what now? Probably needs to be internal as well. Wait, no. Oh, that's what the problem was. Gets when this event occurred. Okay, so now I want to go back to my timeline, and I want to fix this to go .date instead of that, and there we go. Okay, cool. So, let's see. So now as I think through this, my events. So now this will have a date automatically associated with it because that's how inheritance works. Okay. So can I? This is an interesting question. If I go public type, control type, can I then go, let's see, public abstract type control type get. Yeah, this is a semicolon at the end. I'm just testing something because this might be very useful. Is this? Whoa. Okay, whatever that error was, I did not do a thing that this was happy about. Okay, so this. Yes, I know. Where's the? It's supposed to give me a thing to let me. Okay. Just give me your error, maybe, and that will. Yeah, I know build failed. Yes, I know. Okay, whatever. Override, control type. Can I return, like, say, timeline control? Dot get type. Oh. So what I want to do, yeah, okay, that's not gonna work. It was an interesting idea of like letting it be able to kind of specify what control it's supposed to use, but it doesn't work. So, that's a dead end. That'll happen sometimes with programming. I can still make a thing though that does what I want for the most part. So let's do this. Yes, thank you, Windows. Everybody loves you. Actually, we will do this next time because I'm looking down at my clock and it is time up. So take care, everybody. And I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.